Good afternoon, everyone. We are going live today with Dr. Kyra Caldewell-Templeton. Ooh, my New England accent came out real strong on that one, doctor. But we are here to talk with Dr. Kyra Caldwell-Templeton, college, and just ready to drop some of these gems for y'all, especially those of you that are considering pivoting into some form of educational consultant. Hey, boo!
Hey, how are you?
I am good. Can you hear me okay?
I sure can. Can you hear me okay?
I can. I'm like, lately the connectivity has been trash.
Yeah.
Uh, so I'm just trying to make sure like
A
audio.
little delay.
Okay. I'm like, I'm on Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi looks good. Those of you
Yeah,
who
me too.
are here, can you let us know by a thumbs up if you can hear? I think a lot of times like it sounds good to us, but then we don't really know how it sounds to y'all, and I don't want to keep rambling on if it's static attic. So if it's good, just give us a quick thumbs up and we'll know we are in a position to proceed. If I don't see anybody complaining, that's usually like, okay, it must be decent.
I see
How
a
you doing
few.
this morning?
I'm
Thank you
doing
so much.
good. Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Girl, I'm excited. We're in the middle of, it almost feels like the end of this pandemic, but I know that that's not true, right? So I
Right.
say it feels like the end because here in Georgia, some of the rules are starting to lift. Folks are definitely venturing out. Memorial Day got people out and about.
Yeah.
But we know that, like, medically speaking, it is still not over. And so many folks are still choosing to like shelter in place. And if you're an educator, life is still really different. Um,
Right.
so we wanted to have this conversation today with Dr. Kyra Caldwell-Templeton to discuss how you kind of get started in entrepreneurship, what are some tactics you can take to begin that journey, and how you can serve like even now, despite what we have going on. The world doesn't have to be back to normal, so to speak, for us to begin. So let's first just start with telling folks what you do, who you are, and about your work so that they can have some context as to what you do.
Well, first, before I get started, I just want to just recognize those individuals that have suffered through this time with COVID-19. It's been just not recognizable this time. And so when I saw recently the post from the New York Times and the list of all the names, it was very sobering, and definitely my heart, thoughts, and prayers go out to those families who have suffered, who have experienced loss, who have experienced dealing with COVID-19. And so I just want to start there, just to recognize those individuals and just send our prayers and our thoughts. So I have the privilege and honor of working with my co-founder, Rashida Salam Talbert. And we
Yeah.
were friends. Oh my gosh, I can't even remember when we met, probably back way before the KIP days, and decided that we really felt like we needed to impact student achievement through teacher development. And so our focus and our tagline is lighting up hearts and minds through education. And so since she has counseling as her background, like the hearts, that's her field, right? So thinking about social and emotional learning, thinking about restorative practices and restorative justice, thinking about that from the heart. And then my role is looking at the mind. So thinking about how can we support teachers in the classroom with pedagogy, improving instructional practices, using data effectively in order to impact student achievement. And so that's kind of how we started. We started in 2017 with this idea, and kind of been working on the side, focusing on what we're trying to do, which is to support schools, support school districts, teachers, and even leaders, teacher leaders, principals, and even working with students one-on-one to just put forth our mission to light up hearts and minds through education. And so it's been a journey, it's been a joy, and we've met so many awesome people. And even looking at Restore More and what you all have done in the short time that you've been doing it is really, really, really commendable. It's amazing. And again, thank you so much for thinking of us, and thank you so much for the opportunity to chat today.
I think, when we set out to do this work, which is definitely, in the same realm of educational consulting, it was like, how do we share? And when I say we, I have a partner as well, my co-founder, Kimberly Milton. It's like, how
Yes.
do we share what we're good at um, with others? Because there are so many babies, and when I say babies, I mean students, but there are so many babies and educators who like need what we have right here,
Yeah.
but we're limited to sometimes our zip code because of the way education works. Like it's a territorial field. And so I think the second you can like take off that hat of one particular school system or one district and you can step foot into spaces as an objective lens, it
Yeah.
automatically like broadens your impact. And so for us, that was super important, right? Like how do we reach more folks with this content that we believe is super important? And I think you and Rashida have done such a beautiful job in expanding as
Thank you.
well in a short amount of time. And like the scope of the folks that y'all are working with, like y'all have districts, y'all have really well-known school systems, and that's amazing. Like I love celebrating Black women doing amazing things. And so I definitely wanted to make sure that we lifted up the work that y'all were doing, but then also kind of guided folks on like how do you get from solo isolated educator by myself in a
Yeah.
classroom or
Yeah.
solo isolated leader to okay, I'm now running a side hustle on the side, or I have a profitable business that I can now leave whatever role I was in before, if that's an option for folks.
Yeah.
So take a little bit of time and tell us about um, what made you want to pursue entrepreneurship? Like education is hard enough. What made you say,
Right.
I want to venture out on my own and do this?
You know, it's probably, I would say, experience, right? So being in education, you experience a lot of professional development outside of your school district, inside of your school district, across the nation, right? So we've had opportunities to be developed professionally in California and Houston and Atlanta and all of these, New York and all of these places. And then also the experience of presenting at various conferences for my PhD and for my master's program, the experience that Rashida has in her 20 plus years of education experience, right? So we kind of like what you were saying earlier about how can we profit off of our knowledge and our passion, right? So this is not, education for me is not necessarily a job, definitely a career, it's a choice, is what I've always wanted to do ever since I was little. I used to make my twin brother play school. And
Poor
even though we were
Corey.
the same age, we
Sit
were,
down and
I
learn.
was the teacher. I was the
Of course.
teacher, and we had math class, we had music class, we had English class. And
I
so
love it.
I found so much joy out of it. And, you know, coming from the classroom, teaching is very personal. And
Very
it
personal.
is hard to put yourself in the place of said teacher that you may be working with,
Mhm.
because it's personal and you don't experience the things that they experience and you don't deal with the students that they have to deal with. But I felt like we could relate because we were in that situation at one point in time in
Yeah.
a East Cobb district, right? For me, then going to an Atlanta public schools district, dealing with a different set of students. So I think being relatable, putting ourselves in the shoes of the teachers that we were working with, and then also throughout the years seeing that a lot of things could have been prevented, or a lot of scholars could have been supported more if the teachers had the support, right? So my profession is an instructional coach, right? And so I find joy out of that because I can impact students indirectly by making those connections, and then supporting teachers through feedback, through professional development, through whatever I need to find in order to support them, whatever they need, right? So it just might be, hey, let's just have a conversation. Or, hey, can you come into my room and observe and give me some feedback? And so I feel joy, and I can probably say the same thing for Rashida, in working with the adults, because they are the ones who can impact the trajectory the most of those students. So
Students.
yeah, I can work with the students, I can work with the parents, but they are the ones that we need to pour into because they are dealing with it every day. They are experiencing different things every day. They're bringing in their own right? So, you dealt with teachers that they have their own issues.
Yeah.
And then they have to
As we all
come
do.
in, right, leave it at the door, support students that need the support. And so I think we just find joy out of supporting the adults in this work, because they're the ones that have the most impact with the scholar's trajectory. You always hear those stories about, like, I remember Miss So-and-so said I would never amount to nothing. Rappers rap about it all the time. That resonates with people. It really, really does, And then you have those teachers that, I remember Miss Jenkins, she always pushed me and she got on my nerves, but guess what? 20 years from now, I remember.
You still remember Miss Jenkins.
Being a teacher is delayed gratification, point blank, period, right? So you're never going to, and very rare will you experience immediate gratification in the craft, in the moment, right? It comes later. And you have to be okay with that.
Lots of delay in this work. But I think you brought up a really good point, is like, it starts with our educators. I remember, when I was in the classroom early on, and when I first started out, I was hungry to grow. I wanted to grow, but the reality was my classroom management was okay. And so as is often in many schools, leaders are going to focus on the educators who are having a little more of a harder time with management, or a little bit of a harder time getting instruction across. And so oftentimes I almost felt like, man, if you're doing decently and you're surviving, your growth is almost slowed because of it. And so when I think about, the work that you and Rashida are doing with Radiant, I think it's beautiful, because it allows leaders to say, I might not have the capacity to train this cohort of teachers who are excelling with management, but need more help, from a pedagogical point of view. And you're able to come in and potentially service them, alleviate a pain point for leaders, but teachers can still grow. And so this is why I thought it was important to highlight the work that you're doing. But I do want us to dig into this COVID-19 and how it kind of throws a wrench into the world of edupreneurship, right? So if you think about edupreneurs, they are people who are starting businesses mainly within the lane of education, right? And so if I'm supposed to be in schools doing my work, how do you do that when all the schools close? So I will let you start, and I'd love to hear any insight that you have. How does it affect the work when the schools close?
The pivot is real. Okay. And so we literally experienced that, what was it, right before the whole quarantine. We had a contract, and because of all of the uncertainty, we still prepared, right? We still prepared. We made our copies, we're ready to go, show up bright and early, and then everything shut down, right? And so being okay with, okay, so how else can I support? So reaching out to the principal, how are your scholars doing? How are your teachers doing? What can we do to support, right? And then also thinking about, okay, we're going to have a pause, and then a plan. So pivot, pause, and plan for what's next, okay? And so for us, I'm going to throw a question back to you in a little bit, because this is not my sole income source. Right. And so I know you put on there like, hey, what's your side hustle? Drop a thumbs up. And when initially talking about the creation of Radiant Educational Services, we kind of toyed back and forth like, hey, at some point, do we want this to be full time?
Full time.
How would that look? What is the long-term plan? What is the end game? And so as we saw the change in education, especially now, we just wanted to take it slow. We wanted to take it slow and really take our time with figuring out how can we get into schools, how can we support teachers, but then still maintain our regular day-to-day livelihood and the careers that we both enjoy, right? So it would be a different conversation if I did not enjoy what I did. It would be a different conversation if I had aspirations to do something totally different. So it doesn't feel like it's a burden. It doesn't feel like, oh, I wish I was doing this full time. So now going through, we're all zoomed out. but going through various trainings and participating in various meetings daily via digital platforms, we're seeing and learning how to make this work digitally, right? And so it's already hard enough engaging folks when you're right in front of them.
Yes.
Imagine
with professional development, especially. You know,
right.
it's kind of like
we have to do another.
I don't want to, so I guess I'll be here. But yeah.
Exactly. We're doing another professional development. And then usually you can win folks over if you have an interesting topic or you have an interesting activity that's engaging. So just imagine doing that digitally. And I've actually had experiences during this time with really engaging online professional development. That was 3 hours, 2 days, right? And you're on there the entire time.
Yeah, that's long.
Yeah, it's long. Breaks were built in, but it didn't feel like 3 hours. And that's it was good. Engaging and it was good work. You know what I mean? So I think it's all about your mindset and shifting to how can I engage digitally? Folks are engaged digitally every day. They're engaged right now on Instagram Live. They're engaged in getting alerts on their phone. That's engaging in a digital society. So figuring out ways in order to make it creative, to make it fun, and to make it worth their while. And so one thing that we started doing, knowing, because I also came from being a director of operations, so the business side of education, as well as the academic side of education, knowing that, hey, the fiscal year starts July 1. They start planning for the budget in March. I'm sending out cold emails with, hey, I would love to set up a Zoom with you to see what needs you are planning for the upcoming year. What needs do you have for the summer? Here are some things that we can offer, because we definitely pride ourselves on we can customize based on what you need. Because Rashida has her expertise, I have my expertise, and then boom, we can kind of come together. And so that has been good. You know, we've gotten some responses where, hey, this is what we're thinking, because we don't know what the new year is going to look like, but this is what we're thinking. Can you create a proposal around that? Yes, absolutely. Right. And it's going to be a waiting game. It's not going to be immediate. We already talked about delayed gratification. It's not going to be immediate. This work is not immediate. And you have to have that hustler spirit, that hustler mentality. Which absolutely, I don't really have it. I don't think I can build relationships, I can network or whatever, but I don't really see it as hustling, because hustling kind of has like a negative connotation to it. But our folks know what we're talking about when we're saying like hustling to get those contracts, hustling to make those connections in a digital platform. So for you, like, how has it been for you? You all did a huge pivot. How has it been?
So Kim and I are in a unique position. It's a little bit different in that, you know, Kim still works full time and I work full time for Restore More. Okay. So there's I just feel like a different mindset that almost has to be tackled to like first step into any type of entrepreneurship, but especially entrepreneurship full time. And it's understanding that like your success rises and falls and depends on everything that you do. Whereas, you know, I used to work for a very large national organization named KIP, and there were literally teams of people set up just to do certain things, right? So we had a communication team that could send out the emails, and we had a branding team that would talk to us about branding guidelines. When you're running your own business, you are the team. You are all of that. And so just like you and Rashida, we have learned to play to our strengths. And I almost like pulled that out of, you know, some of what you were saying, in that, you know, Rashida is really good at the SEL, restorative practices component, and then you come in with this operational lens as well as the academic lens, and you like marry those together and they create Radiant Educational Services. And so likewise, Kim and I know what we're good at and we know what we're not good at. Like, I do not attempt to brand or visualize or make anything look pretty, because one, it'll take me 3 times longer, and 3, it won't look as good as when Kim does it. Like, I know my girl. I know what she's capable of. I will send her like the ugliest draft of something, and I'm literally like, make it pretty. Like that banner, she made that.
Ooh,
I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. Um, and so we play to each other's strengths. When it comes to like sales and building relationships, that's me all day. I am an extrovert. I will talk to a wall for a good hour. So she's like, go get him, champ. That's not my thing.
yeah,
So I think, playing to strengths when you're starting out your business is going to be so important, and establishing clear guidelines to divide and conquer. If I was trying to do all of those things alongside Kim, we would move a lot slower. Whereas now we're really clear, like, this is my project, this is yours, and let's come back together and combine them. But I love what you said about pivot, plan, and prepare, because we had to do the same thing. So, at the end of March, we had a huge event planned for the community. It was called Raising the Whole Child. It was 300 plus people. We had raised over $4,000. We had sponsors and vendors, and baby, it was about to be lit. Like, it was the biggest thing I've ever done personally and independently. We were bringing like 20 different speakers to the table. And of course, as the leader of this, I had to make a choice to pull the plug.
Yeah.
And some people thought it was too early to determine. In retrospect, I'm like, I made the right call, but it was devastating, honestly.
Yeah.
Like all the work we had been working on since, I think we started that project in like September.
Wow.
So imagine working on something for 6 months and then having to drop it and not know when you can reschedule it, not know anything.
Nothing.
What that did after I picked up all my tears was it allowed us to stop, because that was like something we were working towards. And I said, okay, Kim, at this point, we've got to figure out what we're going to do. One of our biggest events just got demolished. So now what? And we started making things. I don't know. I really give it over to God. Sometimes I just feel like, when your back's against the wall, he is going to give you like infused creativity. I am a very, very faith-driven person. By no means perfect, but I let him guide me. And when I tell you, I would wake up with like visions of something. I was like, people are feeling really disconnected. People want to be in community. What can we do? So we started hosting Monday night circles. We do these bi-monthly. We've met people from all over the world.
Wow.
And we meet for an hour on Monday, and we just literally kind of talk about life. The questions kind of have to do with how you're processing the coronavirus from a mental health perspective.
Yeah.
So it's healing and it's therapeutic for me personally every single week. But then I'm also exposing other people to the work that we do with restorative practices. And so off of that, like one idea, like, oh, let's meet on Mondays.
Yeah.
That then grew into, let me make a script for this. And then I gave the script away for free. I want people to be able to use it, because you can do this with your students. You can check in on their well-being using the script. But then it became, oh, some people might not know how to use it. Let me build an online course. Right. So we built an entire online course, and now that joint sits on the interwebs and sells on a daily basis and makes us money. And that's a blessing, because it's helping people. We're still giving away stuff for free, but there's also an opportunity to like go more in depth. And so I think it is so important to like pause and plan and recognize you can't keep doing what you were doing 3 months ago. It's a new world. So you've got to figure out, what is the problem I'm trying to solve for people, and then give them that. The people that came up with the innovative individuals who decided, I used to make beer, but now I'm going to make hand sanitizer because that's a problem people need solved right now. Like, that joint took off, and not because it's like the most amazing thing in the world, but because there was a problem. So we have to start as educators thinking about our ideas in terms of what problem does it solve, because the more your business solves a problem, the more it will be sought after. I have a friend who does details and event management planning. And again, not my area of expertise. So when we were getting ready to plan this big event with 300 people, I reached out to her. I was like, wait a minute, you have a whole event management company? That's a problem for me, because I don't like doing that. Right. Can you plan and host this event for me? So if your side hustle solves a problem, it will be profitable. It will seek like it's going to attract people to you because they don't want to deal with it. And
I
that's
mean,
just
it's
the
so true.
reality
I
of
mean,
it.
everything you're saying is like, I agree with 1,000%. And I don't know if you're familiar with, and Rashida actually turned me on to it, the Happy Black Woman podcast with Rosetta Thurman.
No,
You need
I
to
might
get
have to
on
check
it
it out though.
because exactly what you were saying in regards to, she has books and so forth and speaking engagements and conferences. I do not work for her, but she's awesome. And when we started thinking about and really, becoming a think tank about Radiant Educational Services, we listened to her a whole lot. And she has a lot of Black women entrepreneurs on that she interviews and talks through these same things that we're talking about. So the Happy Black Woman podcast, Rosetta Thurman, and in her book and on her podcast, she always talks about these 3 things, right? So number 1, offering free things to your audience,
Market,
to
yeah.
your clients, creating online courses. So you've done that. And then also partnering with like-minded individuals. Okay. So those are the top 3 things that she talks about. And she has this whole community of women that they may have different goals as far as entrepreneurship is concerned. You might have some edupreneurs, you might have some entrepreneurs where they're doing different things, different businesses, but the mindset is still the same. And I'm pretty sure, based on, I've been following you all, your experiences, you've had like a cohort of women or a cohort of like-minded individuals who are reaching an end goal based on something that they love, something that they're passionate about. So that's good.
I think sometimes people underestimate how important the mindset is. So I love that, one, you shared a resource, right? Because I didn't know about this podcast. So I literally wrote it down. I dropped it in the chat. But like our mindset as entrepreneurs is so important. In education, it is an emotional roller coaster. Like one day you could be celebrating the highest high, and then you learn about, a trauma that a student had and it devastates you. And then the next day something great happens. And and just like you need to prepare your mindset to be resilient in the face of adversity, it is the same thing in entrepreneurship. And so I love that resource. I'll also share one that I really, really value, which is Side Hustle Pro. It is also a podcast, Black woman, completely different industry. Like her podcast is all about how to take a side hustle and make it a profitable business. But what's super helpful about it is each new episode is like a small thing that an entrepreneur would have to do no matter what your industry, right? So like one week she might talk about how do you upload a video to YouTube and have a nice intro video. It's like the simplest task, but that most of us are like, how do I do that? Another one is like, how do I get a graphic designer for under $20 who can actually do quality work? How do I grow my social media following? So what I love about her, and her name is Michaela Matthews, is I'll just scroll and I'm like, okay, what am I working on this week? And what's one thing I could listen to that can help me to accomplish that goal this week? So I think recognizing that like the things that we take in as entrepreneurs really are either going to fuel us to keep going, or they're going to slow us down based on how much they motivate us. So it is so important to be surrounding yourself with like-minded people, taking in positive imagery and words and affirmations. Like all of that stuff matters because, again, there's no boss on you to be like, hey, is Radiant Educational Consulting Services thriving? Did you meet your targets this year? No one's having an evaluation with you. It's you.
Yeah, it's all you. It's all you. And it could be overwhelming, right? So it's so awesome that both of us have partners in this work to kind of help lighten the load and bounce ideas off of. So you're not in it on your own. I can't imagine folks that are like solo doing this work, whether it's in education or whatever arena, doing it on your own. I just can't imagine. That's tough.
And I'm going to be honest, even in our work, like I initially had the idea, but there was no desire ever in my life to do this thing solo. I literally went to Kim and I was like, hey, I got an idea. Would you? And she was like, of course, because like I trust you and I know what you can do. But I definitely would say if you're thinking about starting something, if you have an idea, go to a trusted friend, a colleague, and invite them just to hear you out. Number one, no one's going to steal your idea. Cut it out. People are lazy. They don't even want to watch a live. You think they want to steal you a business, make a business plan, and execute it? Get out of here. No one is stealing your business plan. That's always like people are like, they're going to steal it. No one's stealing it. But then two, like really decide, is this something that I want to do independently? Or is this something I want to do with a partner? And I think folks sometimes forget, like, if you're someone that wants to have a lot of like control over your business, like I want to be the final say, or I want to have the final vote on certain things, you can write up a business plan where you have majority ownership. Like that's okay, especially if you're the one coming with the idea and you bring it to a partner, right? You might engage someone and say, hey, I have this idea. I know you're interested in this. Let's talk about it. And then as you're having this conversation, you might say, the cut would be 60-40 or 70-30 or 80-20. Like as the person who's bringing the idea, you have that flexibility, but know that when you bring someone else into it, there's so much benefit because you get a whole second set of eyes, expertise. What do you think the biggest benefit of having a co-founder is?
I think everything you said, and the fact that you have someone that's reaching towards the same goal that you are, and has the same work ethic and the same mindset, right? You don't have to think the same, but you have the same mindset, right? I also have learned that having those partnerships, being willing to do pro bono work, being willing to be a subcontractor under someone that's already established, right? So some of our contracts we did sub contracts with. They already had a relationship with such and such district. And then I know you can do X, Y, and Z. I know you can do X, Y, and Z. Come on over and let's do this together. The other benefit is that I don't know everything about counseling and the social, emotional aspect of everything. Yes, can I learn? And yes, can I co-present with her? Absolutely. Can she co-present with me? Absolutely. Right? Because we both have experiences in the classroom. It's just at different times in our lives and so forth. But I think also the fact that I'm not in it alone. And if something pops up, hey, so what happened was I need I need some of this, or can you come and do this? I'll prepare everything. I'll do all the materials. Can you just come in and present to this group of students or group of teachers or what have you? And so having that partnership, that marriage, so to speak, that professional.
It is a marriage. It is a marriage.
And knowing your strengths, just like you said earlier, Kim knows what your strengths are. She also knows what your areas of growth are, and vice versa. And I think that me and Rashida have that same compatibility and wherewithal that we can understand, like, oh, I know that doing this one thing is not her thing. I actually don't mind doing it. It works out. Now, if it was both of us that were struggling in the same thing,
that's when you hire somebody.
Yeah, that would be a totally different conversation. But I think that we balance each other out a lot. And it sounds like you and Kim balance each other out a lot as well.
I think that's important too, right? Like finding that yin to your yang. Like, yes, you should have the similar mindset. That's important. But you don't want to bring in like your carbon copy twin, because then you lessen the variety that your brand and business could be bringing forth. And I think one quick thing I want to make sure I mention is like, Kim and Rashida, for you, is a good friend, right? Like y'all have had a relationship before the business. You will have one throughout the business and even well years off into after. But despite that friendship, I think it is important to be technical and have business protections in place. And so even with Kim, who is my best friend, the godchild, or excuse me, the godmother to my son, we have a contract in place that says these are the percentages. This is when we'll review the percentages. This is how things are divvied out. If I die, this is what happens. God forbid. Yeah. God forbid, knock on all the wood. But I think sometimes we're so eager to like get something started. And we have the best of intentions that we don't put the business wherewithal first. And I think that's something that is just important. And I would encourage anyone who's thinking about entrepreneurship, whether you're in the early phase or you've already started, like Google a partnership contract if you're bringing someone to the table, because everything is fun in the sun, but once you start making money, you just never know how that can sway, change, alter the scenario.
Yeah.
And again, I would bet my last dollar that Kim would never take, steal, do anything negative to me, right?
Yeah.
However, we're still going to make sure that we're operating like any other Fortune
Of
500
course.
company, and we have our ducks in a row.
And you're very transparent, right? So like someone #love said, what is the hardest part working with someone you are close to? I think, money is funny, right? And so you want to be uber clear about where you all stand. And so different partnership agreements, they look different, right? And so it just depends on what you want to do with it, what the end goal is. And I would say it's hard because a lot of times, especially as Black women, we sell ourselves short on how much
talk about it.
We are truly worth. Okay.
Yes.
So I've been to, I'll go ahead and say, lackluster professional development, where I know for a fact these folks got $30,000 for
let's talk about it
2 or 3 day training, right? But then I'm just like, like, well, I don't want to ask for too much. I don't want to ask for too much because then they're going to turn me down and I won't get the contract. Especially when you're starting out, right? You know your worth. So yeah, be willing to do pro bono, be willing to offer freebies, things of that nature, but also be willing to know your worth. Because a lot of times, especially for minority-owned businesses, and not just talking about entrepreneurship, I'm talking about in general, right?
In general,
folks sell themselves short because they think like, oh, I'm not like my white counterpart over here.
A million reasons. Or I don't have a doctorate. I don't have a master's. I don't have enough experience. Like, we do this to ourselves, right? And I love that you broached this topic, and I'm going to answer that question as well. I think we're taught to sell ourselves short. We go to professional environments and we want to show up and we want to showcase our skills. And so we do the most. Like, we do the most. Yeah. We get the job done.
Yes.
We jump the hurdle and then some. But then there becomes this expectation for that to be replicated every time. And so that can lead to the burnout of Black women, right? Because people take for granted that extra time went into that. They just assume it was easy. And so then when you pivot outside of a space where you have like a salary and you got to start demanding how much you're worth, it's tough. I'm going to be really, really vulnerable right now and like share something that's kind of embarrassing and was hard for me, but I think it's important. I'll never forget, in one of my early pitch meetings, it was definitely like our first 6 months of business. We're like babies in this thing. We're crawling. And I go to sit down with somebody and I put the contract in front of them. It was for, and I'll never forget because it hurt. It hurt my pride. I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my, Anyway, so we put the contract in front of them and it was $7,700 for a 6-week curriculum.
Wow.
A 6-week curriculum that you could take, give it to a teacher, and they could literally implement it the next day.
Okay.
And the person told me, well, why are you charging that much? Second step is only $250 for 4 grades. So if you multiply that by 4, that's only $1,000. Why are you $7,700?
Wow.
And I said, tell me how second step is working for you. Tell me how it's culturally responsive and it's getting your young Black boys to internalize the greatness in them. Tell me how it's reducing your suspensions. Tell me how it's keeping your students in school longer, and show me the impact on achievement.
Yeah.
And that was honestly so hard because, one, this was like a person I knew. This was a colleague. This is someone who knew my work ethic. They knew what I could create. They've seen my work.
Right.
When I took that same contract 8 months later, raise the price to $10,000 and put it in front of another school leader who didn't know me from Adam. She was like, wow, this is a steal.
Insane. Wow.
Didn't question it at all. But I share that story, one, because it was like really embarrassing. My pride was hurt. Because again, I felt like you knew what I could do. But I share it to say, stop lowering your asking price. Stop lowering your bar. You know what I decided? Because that person did eventually sign the contract. This is awesome. I'm going to work with you for the school year, and we won't be doing any work further. Why? Because it's my business and I have that choice. Why? Because I want school leaders and schools that adamantly believe that SEL, restorative practices, and uplifting Black children, breaking the school to prison pipeline. I want teachers who, like educators who believe that in their core of core. And if you don't want to invest in that, then I don't want to work with you. That's okay. But I don't want to work with you.
Correct. That's your choice. And I see like folks are like, yes, that's good. Alicia says that's good. And Taniqua Miller, she says imposter syndrome.
Ooh, let's talk about that one.
I'm like, yes, because we all experience that at some point in our lives. And I feel like sometimes I have dreams that I really didn't graduate from high school, that I was short of credit from graduating from Spelman. And I'm like, wait a minute. And I wake up, I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm good. That I really didn't get my PhD. And so it's that feeling that you're inadequate, or that you're not good enough, or that you did not put forth the work. And so again, that goes back into self-value. It goes back into how you see yourself, and then how you think others perceive you. Okay. And so if you think others perceive you in a certain way, then you may respond or react accordingly. But you can't let people govern how you see yourself in your profession, in your personal life, in the world in general. And that's what a lot of people are, they fall victim to.
I think it's easy to, though. Like it gets all of us. I would be a bald-faced liar if I said I never struggled with imposter syndrome. There are so many times where I'm like, why should I be doing this, right? Or like, who am I to be leading this?
But why shouldn't you? That should be the
question. Thank you, sis.
The mindset, changing that mindset. Why shouldn't you be the one? And not even looking at like, oh, well, so-and-so's doing it over here, because we follow a couple of folks that are, doing similar work, entrepreneurship, whatever. I mean, we even ran into each other at the same school presenting on different topics with different audiences, right? And I peeked in, got some pictures or whatever. He's like, I didn't even see you back there. And so, being willing to have these conversations, being transparent, being vulnerable, like you said earlier. And and that story, I wouldn't be embarrassed by that. I wouldn't be embarrassed.
I'm not anymore. I was embarrassed when he turned me down and sunned me over what at the time felt like pennies, because now I charge double that. And again, it's like,
there you go. And it depends on what that institution values. If they don't value that, and you kind of know your audience, know your clients, know who you are trying to go after. If they don't value that, then they're going to be like, oh, I can just go to an online program. I can just go to whatever. Well, then do it, right? And then being okay with that. But that is hard if that is your sole income. That is hard. You still turning down thousands of dollars. So
facts.
What is the balance? Figuring that whole piece out.
I think one of the things that you said, and that maybe I didn't even respond enough to, was better believe that in your first couple of years of starting something, whether it's a side hustle or you are going full time, you're gonna have to do stuff for free.
Yeah.
You just need to be intentional about what you say yes to. But if someone offered us to come and speak on a panel, I was in there. If someone gave us an opportunity to present at a conference, we were in there. Pretty much in our first year, I would say about 80% of the things we did were not for payment. And this helps you to build your networking, groups. This helps you to get experience. This helps you to, be able to in the name of this game of networking, sometimes you have to do a favor to get a favor. And I think, you know, when people see that you're willing to do things for free, one, it says I'm hungry, but
Yeah.
then two, they're able to get a sneak peek at your work. Like never give them everything for
No,
free,
of course
but
not. Yeah.
if you put a little bit of you in there, they're
Little
able to see
teaser.
like, exactly. Oh, I like that. Oh, I need more of that. I need to
Yeah.
follow up on that because I'm interested.
Right.
So I think it is important to do things for free and know that like even now there are still things that I do for free. And sometimes it's just based on the relationship. So like
Correct.
Teach for America wanted to do an interview recently, and it's like their national team. That's a
Wow.
huge deal
Yeah.
for us. That's a
Yeah.
lot of exposure. They didn't pay us a thing, and I don't care to be paid a thing. Sometimes the value is not monetary, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah. Yeah.
value for us is like exposure and new readership and a new audience. It's not always a dollar amount, and I think if you think like that, then you're going to miss out on some really great things that could elevate you, your business, your idea.
Yeah. And you're
Yeah.
positioning yourself. So here's another P word, right? I'm ELA, like alliteration. You know, the whole pivot, plan, prepare, position yourself in order to be in those avenues and in those arenas, right? And so, for instance, I did some pro bono work using my operations background to help an entity develop a handbook, okay? And you know, we come from the world of handbooks, right? So that's like, okay, whatever, let's do it. And so my return on investment, someone says, okay, return on
Yep.
investment comes eventually. Yes, my return
Yes.
was then they put me in contact with someone that I was able to subcontract with the large district to do professional development.
See?
And so those connections, and I believe, yeah, I believe I was introduced to this individual through Rashida. Okay, so
It's
again,
crazy.
those
Yep.
points of connectivity with other people, and my dissertation
It matters.
was all about it's all about relationships, right? And so that was my focus for my dissertation, mainly looking at students and their relationships with teachers and how that impacts student achievement, but just that overall mindset of building relationships, maintaining relationships. Like me and you, we never worked in the same building.
But
We
we
never
always
worked
been
in the
cool.
same building. We were in the same organization, and then you know got together socially at different times. But the fact that, and this is, I mean, I don't even remember what year you left.
2018, but I've been there since 2008, so it's been a minute.
So I joined in 2011, left in 2017.
Yep.
But the
So yeah, it
fact
was
that,
close.
yeah, so pretty close. The fact that we never worked in the same building, we never were colleagues, right? But we're still in 2020 having this conversation it says a lot about how we interact with one in relationships. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
I love that you shared how you know were able to partner with the district, because when you're an entrepreneur, that's like the holy grail, right? When you can partner with more than one school. And I think getting folks to recognize like that started from a simple relationship. Our first client literally came from a teacher who was in a program with us, like a residency program to work on our business. She loved our concept. She went back and shared it with her principal. That was our very first client. So it's very interesting how, you know, as you start to put on this new hat of business owner, entrepreneur, the way you show up in different spaces is important as well, because you never know who's watching, right? You never know who's watching for that next contract. And so whether it's like a setting like this where it's live and it's informal, or it's a networking event, or shoot, you're out at the High Museum with your family. Like I literally had someone come up to me at the High and say, "Excuse me, are you Restore More?" That joint blew me. I was like,
"Oh my gosh, that's awesome."
And I'm a nerd. I was like, "Joe," my husband's name is Joe. I was like, "Joe, did you hear that? Did you hear that?" But I think it's so important to recognize like relationships matter, and how you show up when you are like doing the work that you do so matters, because it could be the next thing.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And your reputation, your work ethic precedes itself, right? And so thinking about that in whatever arena you're in, whatever you are standing in, wherever you are standing, people will look at you and see how you carry yourself. And, you know, we used to always tell our scholars that all of the time
Yeah.
about character, right? And it's what you're doing when someone is not watching. And then
Integrity.
if you bring that over to the business, having some like a business mindset, the same thing applies. Like, I know that whatever story you told me earlier, and you'll probably tell me who it was later on, I may have that in the back of my mind, like, you know what, what do they value? Is this aligned with my values?
Yep. And that's like figuring out, am I pitching the right person, right? Because sometimes you think this is somebody that's super interested in your service, and then you realize, like you said, there's a value misalignment, and that's okay. But they might not be the ideal client for you right now.
But you have to establish your own value as a business first. Okay, what are your values? What is your what's important to you, and what are you willing to accept, and what are you willing to like tolerate? And then from there, thinking about like, how does that vision align with everything that we do? And so if it does not align, and I say that even for like leaders, right? When we're thinking about, okay, so what is the school's vision? What are your values?
Yeah.
Okay. And even working in an operational setting, if it did not align with what the school's vision was for that year, we're going to have to turn you down. We can't do it. We can't do it because it does not work. It does not fit with what we're doing and what we're working towards this year, maybe next time or what have you, and being okay with that. But again, going back to, if this is your full time, you might have to alter your expectations and alter a little bit, not to impede on your visions and your values, but just kind of tweak it a little bit, depending on, what the need is.
I think like what you said was so important. And we had to, especially after that meeting, it was like, wait a minute, we need to step back and figure out what is our customer profile. And so we actually did like an activity as a team where we said, okay, if we look at all of our clients in the past, this is who they are. Yeah. This is where they hang out. This is what they watch. This is what they like to eat. Like, I could tell you 11 things, right, about my ideal client. Now, when I had that first meeting and I got turned down, I had no idea who it was. Now, looking back in retrospect, I'm like, oh, it makes sense why he said no.
Of course.
There was a misalignment in vision. Like, he had one thing that he wanted, but he didn't have clear indicators as to how to get there. And so when he was presented with this different way, it was like, oh, that's a mismatch. But then also, if we've learned, hey, these are the type of people that are quick to action around our business, he didn't fit that. So it really did logically make sense. I think it was just a learning lesson.
Yes.
And I love what someone just said. They said, not every opportunity is one to take, even if it's great. And this will be like my last bit, because normally we do these for 20 minutes, y'all, but the last couple of days, I'm like, that's what it is when you're talking to somebody that like you value and you appreciate, and there's like a element of friendship there. The time flies.
I'm telling you.
There was a client that I was engaging with. We had done some really short-term work, and there was a potential for us to like travel to their state. That's the reason why it was initially short-term. They were in Atlanta. We did a training while they were here, and there was a potential to like travel to their home state and take it later. Well, between the time we were thinking of doing this and when we had first done the first service, we found out some like really disheartening news. And I mean like really disheartening, like some incidents at the higher leadership level where there was some funds mismanagement. There were some accusations of sexual harassment. I mean, just like some really seedy things. And ethically, there was a lot of money on the table for our next contract. And I sat back with Kim and I had a conversation with her and I said, yo, I do not feel comfortable engaging in this work. I said, and I'm sorry, because it's a lot of money. I said, however, like we have to have some really clear values. And with all the things that they're currently dealing with, I don't feel comfortable engaging into a partnership with this particular institution. We have to think about how our brand looks. We have to think about our interactions and with whom. It just wasn't worth the risk for us. And there are certain things that you have to be willing to draw a hard line on. And when it comes to like woman empowerment and self-respect and this whole Me Too movement, I don't ever want to be an organization that's like, well, they paid the check though. Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
No, that's not
No.
okay. That's not okay.
Yeah. All the lessons you learn.
Yeah.
All the lessons you learn. So let me ask you this as we get ready to close.
Okay.
You know, we know that folks are getting budget cuts, but we also know that because of this odd school year end, folks are still thinking about what is the professional development that my staff needs when they come back, and like how do I bring those things here. If somebody watching this is either an educator or a leader or works at a district level, how do they get in touch with you to bring you guys out to do the amazing work that y'all do?
Thank you for that plug. They can email us at radianteducationalservices@gmail.com. They can also follow us, radiant_educational_services on IG. And we can definitely talk and chat and set up a time for us to figure out what your school need is, and then figure out what we can do to support your school need. And I understand that, like we talked about earlier, budget cuts are happening across, not just in the educational arena, but throughout, okay, throughout. And it's hard right now. It's very hard. There's a lot of uncertainties, but just even having a thought partner in this work is important. So just shoot us an email, radianteducationalservices@gmail.com. And we're going to be here to customize whatever needs your school, your district has, and we can work from there.
Thank you so much for plugging those, giving people like really clear, easy ways to find you, because it's needed, right? Like,
yeah.
Our babies and our educators are getting ready to come back to a place that isn't going to look the same. And so when I think about the learning trajectory that is going to have to take place to grow the kids, they need you. When I think about the well-being of our teachers and kids, they need you. And so I want to always make sure that I'm uplifting others that do great work. I believe in this world there is an abundance of work, and so no one ever need to be stingy. There's enough schools for us all to eat, and so I just so appreciate you leading the work that you do. Thank you all so much for coming to join this. Somebody says this is motivation for us big kipsters to make time for side hustles, passion projects. And I will say this. If you've been in your role for a long time and you're starting to feel like unmotivated and just you don't have the same like for it, it's a great time to start a passion project. All that means is you figured out how to do your role on autopilot because you're good.
Yeah.
And you need something else that's just going to excite you. It's a great way to like be creative, get your ideas out there, and potentially make income for doing something that you love and sharing your gift. So
yeah, and see what's out there. Right? So we created our own like digital Rolodex of folks that, and we might have similar folks on our list that we know personally that we met at a Starbucks. I'm like, hey, this is what we're thinking, and do you have a template for that? Just kind of to get our juices flowing, and then we were able to then pivot and make a plan for ourselves that was most applicable to what we were trying to do. Because what Restore More offers is totally different from what Radiant Educational Services offers. And being okay with that. And even if I know in the back of my head, like, well, you know what? Restore More, they offer that. Let me go ahead and shoot them a client, or vice versa. And so again, having that cohort, that circle of individuals that offer differing services, I think is key. And not being afraid, like you mentioned earlier, like no one's going to steal your idea. Figure out ways that you can support each other. Figure out ways that you can join together and collaborate and do subcontracts and come together to support the greater good, which is our students, right? And supporting our teachers who handle them and teach them and love on them every day.
And if anyone is interested in joining kind of like a group, as to what Kyra was mentioning, We have a mastermind group that we host bi-weekly on Friday mornings. That has been really great to, just like you said, get those juices flowing, get feedback on ideas. Or if you just want a space to like currently process some of this pandemic, we have both. So feel free to slide into our DMs. IG has a limit on live, so you can see that countdown going down. We have hit that mark.
Okay.
So thank you for this. I so appreciate it. It has been great. And y'all take care and stay safe out there.
Be safe. God bless.
We will. You too.